Hi all, if you are following along in order, this will be the second project you make. This is our 2-layer toy coaster. You'll notice that we can spin it and you've got 2 pretty layers of gears spinning. This has been one of our best-selling products since we released it. And this is a wood stain sample, but you're going to be able to do anything you want to this box. And it's really kind of a pretty fun piece to play with. So let's start with opening our bag and seeing the different pieces of the project that you need to prepare and decorate. So we'll open our bag and pull everything out. Notice that you've got a set of screws you can set aside right now. A set of gears, we're going to open those up and you're going to sand them and then color on one side of them is fine unless you're a purist and feel like you need to color on the other one, but you do want to make sure you sand both sides of them so that when they spin along the bottom, they're smooth. And then let's look at the different pieces of wood in this project. The bottom of your stack should be one with 5 large holes and say steamytech.com. This will be the base of your coaster. Another one with 5 small holes. This is where the gears will spin on the bottom layer. A large analyst. Notice that that's a little bit thick, and we'll talk about why that is. And then this lovely little 6-legged propeller. This is going to allow us to put one set of gears facing down and one set of gears on the layer above it. Then you'll have a thin analyst, and we'll use those. And this piece we either call the ears or the support piece. It's going to be connected to this analyst like this. So you're not going to see very much of the analyst, just the inside, the teeth and the very inside of the circle. And then this propeller piece is going to go on the top to finish off the second layer of the analyst like so. And then beyond that, you're going to put this ring on the top. What this does is it gives you some leverage to be able to turn it really easily. So you definitely want to use this ring. Now, if you're planning to build a coaster, you're also going to have a very thin ring like this. When you're sanding and finishing your wood, please don't sand this piece. It's really thin. If you squeeze it too hard or if you try to sand it, you will probably break it. And you're going to want it to be able to put it there, put your acrylic on top, and then you'll have this thicker ring that goes on top of that. So now go ahead, put your thin ring and your acrylic aside, and take the rest of these pieces and sand them and then decorate them however you want. Sharpies, wood stain, anything that you're excited about using, and you'll all of a sudden have a beautiful 2-layer coaster to display. All right, now that your sanding and staining is all done, we can come back through and look at the pieces of this 2-layer toy and actually do the assembly on it. You should have 2 large sun gears, 6 small planetary gears all ready to go, a base, a coaster bottom, an analyst layer, a 6-legged propeller, another analyst, our support ring with ears, a 3-legged propeller, and a big ring. And if you've decided to do this as a coaster, you'll also have a thin ring acrylic and another slightly bigger ring. And we've got some hardware. So let's start with opening up our hardware bag. Make sure you don't lose things. There are just an awful lot of pieces in here. Feet. You're going to see one long silver screw. We'll use that for the middle. You're going to have 3 little short 1/4-inch screws that we'll use just like we did in the coaster build, exactly the same way. And then you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other screws that look very similar in length. Notice this one is a little shorter and this one is a little longer. So sort them out so you've got the 3 shorter screws together. Those are actually 5/8 inch. And the 4 longer 3/4-inch screws together. You should also have 4 little wood donuts. We call them spacers. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 nuts. And now we're ready to start to put this together. So we'll start with aligning these bottom 2 pieces and getting them glued together. The easiest way to do that is to take your 3/4-inch screws, put them face, either way, up or down. You're the side, you put them against the side you, with this on the side you want to have be the bottom, because we're going to flip this over and mount a piece above it. So we're going to put the analyst on top of it and mount it. And we're going to use a little bit of glue to do that. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is we do not want to get glue in those screws. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on this ring here, and I'm just going to put it as far away as I can from the screw hole so I don't risk getting glue in my screws when I'm using it as an alignment point. We're going to flip it over, and this is our alignment point. So 1, 2, 3, 4 nicely aligned pieces. Push that down like so, and we've managed to get our base anchored nicely. Now you can just lift it up as long as the glue will stick. You want to make sure your glue is sticking well before you pull those out, and you can set that on the side. And now we're ready to start building what we call our hockey puck. I don't know if that's a good name for it or not, but that's certainly been what we call it. And we're going to start with putting 3 screws down through every other hole, just like we did on the single layer coaster. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to put my 3 little drops of glue in the middle. 1, skip 1, go to the next one, skip 1, go to the next one. Don't forget you're skipping them. If you put them next to each other, you'll be ungluing. Get those all started. And then screw them in to make sure that they all go where I want them to go, or at least push down on them. That one wants to screw a little bit of screwdriver-ness. And then again, remember, once you're done with this, you're going to go ahead and wipe up any extra glue you have on the wood so that it doesn't leave a bright shiny mark just to annoy you on your pretty piece that you're making. Like so. Wipe up the extra here. Also keep in mind that the piece we're building here is this one, so we've got 2 layers of gears to put together, and we want to make sure we get the bottoms and the tops right. So we've got this all set, and we're going to take our 3 short screws now, and I would strongly encourage you to separate these and look at them and make sure you've got the 3 5/8" screws, because once we do this, you're kind of committed. So I'm going to take these 3 screws, and I'm going to screw them with my screwdriver up from the bottom. So I've got my 3 little 1/4 inches sticking out, and I'm going to take these 3 screws, and I'm going to use my screwdriver, and you're definitely not going to just be able to push with this. You definitely want to use a screwdriver and screw them in. So be patient with me while we do that little bit of screwing these things in. And keeps going and going and going. You could do this with an electric screwdriver if you have one. It makes life a little bit easier for these big projects with lots and lots and lots of screws. And if you're not done screwing by the time I am, you can certainly pause the video and come back to it. Then we're also going to take this long silver screw and put it facing up through the bottom. Now notice that didn't require screwing in, which is good. You're going to have to take it out in a minute. Hold on to it and flip the piece over so you've got 3 screws sticking up. Make sure they're really all the same length. And then we're going to take one of our gears. This is going to be the top layer set of gears. So if you did a different set of colors for the bottom layer and the top layer, we're putting the top layer set of gears in. And we're going to put them here, here, and here. And notice how nice and smooth that spins. And then we're going to take our donuts, our little wood donuts, and we're going to add our little wood spacers to these layers. What we want to do now is we want to glue the earpieces to the analyst. So the easiest way to do that again is to flip this over, put a little bit of glue on the circle pieces on these ears, come down, flip this over, and glue these 2 layers together like so. Make sure they stay nice and lined up. And then we're going to be ready to put that top layer on that we just made. Now I need to do one more thing here. We're going to take our piece with our 4 gears and the 4 donuts on it, and we're going to take this layer and set the analyst on the outside. And notice how if you spin the analyst, the gears go around. And now we're ready to put the layer on top here. So we're going to take this, seat it nicely, just a little bit on top of all of those 3 screws. It's not going to go all the way in. We're going to start the nut on top of that center screw so that it doesn't escape. Make sure we don't want to do that. And then the easiest way to do this next piece is, rather than flipping it over, just move it over a little bit and at an angle so you can get your screwdriver underneath it and start to screw these screws in and pull the 3 layers together. And the easiest thing to do is just make it all nice and tight, and then we'll back the screws up when we're ready to. So you'll see I'm screwing it together, getting this all nice and tightly put together. And at this point, I'm too tight and I can't spin these ears and these gears anymore. So what we're going to do now that I've got it all nice and tight is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to back it all up just a half a turn or so. And the secret with these is loose. So if it's not loose, this will spin, but it's not very loose. So I'm going to back it up one more little bit. And once I do that, I should be in a state where all of these are pretty loose. And once it's adjusted to a tightness you're happy with, then we can put nuts on the top. And again, we're going to do that the same way by doing just a little dot of glue on the tip of the screw on all 3 of these. And I'm going to put my nuts on the top. Now, they don't need to be on super tight. You certainly don't want to tighten this wood down anymore, right? Because we just made it nice and loose and ready to go. But putting that glue on means the nuts won't fall off in your coaster as things shake loose over time. So we're going to put that on, and that on, and that on. Wipe up any excess glue that you have, again, just like we're continuing to do. Make sure that'll spin nicely around. I'm actually going to take this one more thing back, just a hair more. Make sure it's still spinning. See how nice and smooth that is. And now comes the trickiest part of the whole thing. We're going to hold my nut on the bottom, my fingers on the bottom here, holding onto this screw. I'm going to take this nut off. And I'm going to let that center screw fall out. But we don't want to have anything bad happen to that center spacer. So I'm going to pick it up and flip it immediately over. Flip my piece over and lay it on its back. So we're now looking at the bottom, and we're going to put on the next set of gears. The sun gear in the middle, upside down this time, and my outer planet gears around the outside, like so. Bottoms facing you. And then we're going to flip this over, this big base over, and we're going to put it over that center screw and settle it down until things are spinning okay. At that point, I'm going to lift it up by this screw head. You can do it either way. And stick my finger here to make sure I don't lose anything. Put a little drop of glue on this screw, like so. And very loosely put a nut on the bottom. Now, in this case, you probably won't want to try to get completely flat. Just make sure you've got a little bit of space between the wood and the screw, and that bottom layer is spinning back and forth smoothly. Now, we're going to make the second layer spin. So we're making the bottom layer of gears spin here. If we hold the ears, we can make the top layer of gears spin. But what if we want them to spin together? So what we're going to do is we're going to come and align these ears that have been sticking out to holes on the bottom. And we're going to drop these longer screws through the holes on the bottom, like so. And then again, very gently. And if we do that, now you can see we can easily turn it, and we're going to turn both sets of gears at the same time. So now we want to get those screws with nuts on, and with those nuts glued on. So I'm going to repeat this process with gluing my nuts on. Put a little drop of glue there. Add a nut to that. Put a little drop of glue here. And loose is your friend here. They should be about the right length that you can make them flat, but even if you can't, don't make them tight. Make sure it stays nice and loose, because if it gets tight, you're not going to be able to spin it anymore. So that bottom layer will stop being able to spin. So it's all about how loose can you get these pieces as you do them. So a little bit of glue, little nut on here loosely. Wipe off my excess glue. Come back to this one. Little drop of glue. And at this point, the mechanical pieces of my project are done. But we still want to make it look pretty, because this is all about aesthetics. So I can spin it this way, but let's see if we can make it a little prettier. I'm going to flip it over, and let's put the base on it first to capture these nuts so they don't stick out and annoy us. And we'll do that by getting these holes all aligned. Just dropping this on. Make sure the outside edges are aligned nicely so it's all pretty. Again, we're going to put the feet on the bottom. I know, if you're doing this video first, you didn't see me just do this. Here we go. We're going to put the feet on the bottom with 4 little drops of glue in those circles, and then putting my feet on each of the circles. The glue off my fingers so that it doesn't stick to the feet as we put them on. That last foot on, and now I have a nice stable thing to turn, but it's really hard to turn at this point, just because I can't get to this ring. So we're going to use this piece here as a way to give us some leverage on it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue around this ring. And now, rather than lining up on the outside edge, we're going to line up on the inside edge, and we'll do that here. Set this down and line that up like so. Push down so that's nice and anchored. Oopsie. Gotta wait for it to dry. Push it down. Anchor it smoothly. Give the super glue a few seconds to set, which I clearly am not successfully doing here. I'm going to flip it over and push. Once your super glue is anchored, then you'll be able to spin this really easily on your super glue and on your center. Now that you've got that, we can put the rest of our coaster together. We're going to put our thin ring on next. Please be careful not to deform it as you glue it on. And I'm going to do this by putting glue on the thin ring. If you didn't sand it or do anything to it, be aware that you may want to, we certainly didn't want to sand it, but you may want to color it anyway, just to make sure your edges don't show through. And it doesn't end up being this glaring little piece of light colored wood in the midst of the rest of your pretty piece. Pushing down on that to get it nice and smooth. So now I have my round center for my coaster. I'm going to take a piece of paper and set a piece of paper down here so that I can peel the plastic back and set my acrylic top somewhere safe. So the next thing we want to do is peel the acrylic. Acrylic and glue do not mix. If your fingers are gluey, go get them cleaned off, or at least make sure the glue is dry and that you're not touching the surface of the glue, of the acrylic with your fingers. Peel the acrylic off on both sides of it and set it down out of the way. And now we're ready to do the last two steps. I'm going to put a thin bead of glue all the way around the top here. Very thin and small and even. And then we are very carefully going to set that acrylic piece in the top. You can do it the other way, but if you spritz glue out accidentally, it's definitely going to get on your acrylic. And glue and acrylic do not mix. So I'm going to take this, get it at a nice little angle like so, and then drop it into place. And then I'm ready to put my top ring on. Now this top ring, if it slides, we'll slide the glue out onto my acrylic. So I'm going to be a little careful with that as well. Set that down ever so carefully and push down on it. Make sure it doesn't slide around at all. Now, if you get glue for some reason on your acrylic, I would strongly suggest not wiping it up. It will dry almost clear. But if you start to wipe, you're going to etch in the plastic even more and make it even more visible. So be a little careful there. We can certainly send you another piece of acrylic if for some reason you have a problem. But be careful and you'll end up with a beautiful coaster that you're proud to show off. And you've done it. You've made one of these Steamy Tech 2-layer coasters. And now we're ready to move on to the next project.